All right, let's jump right into a story that's unfolding as we speak, a massive global cyber manhunt. This one comes to us from our source, pressreleasecloud.io. They're the experts in content creation and distribution, by the way. So who's the target? We're talking about the alleged boss of one of the most dangerous ransomware gangs out there. It's a real cyber whodunit, and we're going to break down exactly how the good guys unmasked this digital ghost. So that's the big question, right? It's what's driving this huge international operation. I mean, after an investigation that was just painstaking, stretching across continents, they finally put a name and a face to the person supposedly running this whole criminal empire. And here he is, Oleg Evgenievich Nefedov. He's a 35-year-old Russian national, and until pretty recently, this guy was a complete ghost, operating deep in the shadows. Now? Well, now he's on Interpol's red notice list. That basically makes him one of the most wanted cybercriminals on the entire planet. So let's dig in. Who is this guy, and what exactly is he accused of building? Okay, to really get why this manhunt is such a massive deal, we need to understand the organization we're talking about. This isn't just some small-time hacking group. No, this is the Black Basta ransomware empire. And when I say empire, I mean it. The scale here is just staggering. Look at that number, over $100 million. That's what they've extorted from more than 600 organizations all over the world. This is a huge, incredibly profitable criminal business that has absolutely crippled critical services. We're talking hospitals, factories, you name it. So how do they do it? Their signature move is this really nasty tactic called double-extortion. See, it's not enough for them to just lock up your files. That's old school. First, they sneak in and quietly steal your most sensitive data. Then, they encrypt everything. So suddenly you're getting hit with two threats at once. It's pay us to get your systems back, and pay us or we leak all your secrets to the world. It is just brutally effective. Now, a group this sophisticated doesn't just pop up out of thin air, and you'd be right. Intelligence analysts are pretty sure that Black Basta is basically the sequel to the infamous Conti ransomware group. You remember them? They supposedly broke up back in 2022. But look at the evidence, the timing, the tactics, even the malware code itself. It all points to the same crew, just operating under a new name, a strategic rebrand. So how did they get so big so fast? They used something called ransomware as a service, or RAS. Just think of it like a criminal version of a franchise business. Nefedov's core team, they're the ones who allegedly build the weapons, right? The ransomware itself and all the tech behind it. Then they recruit affiliates to actually go out and do the dirty work, to launch the attacks. And these affiliates get a huge piece of the pie, like 70 to 80% of the ransom. It's a brilliant business model from a criminal perspective, because it lets the core team scale up and attack hundreds of victims at once while keeping their own hands relatively clean. Okay, so you've got this super sophisticated, super anonymous structure. How in the world did law enforcement manage to unmask the ghost at the top? Well, that's where the detective work comes in. Let's get into the investigation. Right, so the big break wasn't just one aha moment. It was a whole mix of things. Good old-fashioned police work combined with some seriously cutting-edge cyber forensics. The investigators did it all. They painstakingly followed the money, tracing all these cryptocurrency payments. They tore apart the malware, looking for unique digital fingerprints. And here's the kicker. They gathered human intel. And that turned out to be the real game changer. A huge piece of this puzzle fell into place during a series of police raids in Ukraine. This is where the digital crime spree suddenly got very, very physical. Cops went in and seized actual servers, crypto hardware wallets, phones, you name it. And on all that gear, they found the digital breadcrumbs they were looking for. Stuff like transaction logs and chat messages that created a direct line from the gang's infrastructure in Ukraine all the way back to their alleged boss in Russia, Nefedov. And according to a law enforcement source in that pressreleasecloud.io article, this is really the main takeaway. For so long, the leaders of these gangs have operated like they were totally untouchable, hidden behind layers of anonymity. But this case proves that that veil can absolutely be pierced. So just identifying this guy was a massive win, a monumental victory, really. But now the hard part begins. The next phase is the international chase, and this is where things get really complicated. We're talking a manhunt that has to navigate tricky international laws and, well, politics. There's a lot of optimism coming from the investigators. They really believe that better international cooperation and just better tech are making the world a much smaller place for these criminals. The message they're sending is loud and clear. Those safe havens you thought you had, they're disappearing. But, and this is a huge but, here's the reality check. Nefedov is thought to be in Russia, and Russia's constitution flat out prohibits extraditing its own citizens. So what does that mean? It means as long as he stays inside Russia, he's physically beyond the reach of international law enforcement. It's a major roadblock. Okay, so you might be thinking, if they can't actually arrest him in Russia, why does this all matter so much? Well, it's all about the bigger picture. It's about the long game in this fight against global cybercrime. First off, let's be super clear about what this red notice actually is. It's not some kind of international arrest warrant. Think of it more like a global tripwire. The moment Nefedov tries to cross a border into any country that works with Interpol, bam, he can be arrested on the spot. So it effectively traps him, right? It severely limits where he can go and how he can access all that dirty money. And this whole situation brings us to the most practical part for all of us. This case is a stark reminder of the very real threat these groups pose to businesses everywhere. So what can you do? Well, law enforcement is pushing a layered defense strategy. We're talking about simple things that make a huge difference, like using multi-factor authentication, keeping offline backups of your critical data, and just training your staff to spot phishing attempts. It's all about making yourself a tougher target, so these criminals decide it's easier to just move on to the next guy. So, at the end of the day, we're left with a pretty big question. Law enforcement has pulled the mask off the alleged kingpin, which is a massive step towards holding these guys personally accountable. But with a structure like Black Basta's, this decentralized franchise-style model, is taking out the leader really enough to bring the whole empire down, or will someone else just step up to take his place? That right there is the central challenge in this never-ending global fight.